How's it going, guys? How are you doing? And welcome to a brand new tutorial from Udemy. So since the 2020 developer survey of Stackoverflow is actually finally out since February 2020, we are all excited to take a look on the results from the entire developers around the globe. So this is actually a really interesting thing, and the most interesting thing that I just caught my eyes is the Angularjs framework is actually the most dreaded framework in 2020. That's actually really cool. Alongside Docker and Kubernetes have been the most loved systems and containerization or like VMware tools around the globe. So the most important part to start with is actually there's 65,000 developers. I'm saying developers, not like regular people, have joined the survey, and this is actually a result gathered from all of these 65,000. It's actually a huge, during the current Americans, pretty much coders are actually increasing day by day. So this is actually absolutely amazing doing that. So you can take a look on the survey at insight.stackoverflow.com and survey 2020, and of course you got this overview thing. First thing, you can take a look on developer profile to see like salaries and stuff like that, but we're going to be mostly interested in the technology tab. So the technology category is actually what most technology or popular technologies have been used for 2020. So programming, scripting, or even markup languages, what is the most dreaded one? What is the most used language? And as always, for 8 years in a row, JavaScript is actually taking the way and taking pretty much the lead of the most used programming language in 2020. So this is pretty much really great, and it's actually having almost 70% a gap between an HTML and CSS, as well as actually taking the second pretty much spot in here. There's also SQL, there is Python and Java coming next, and I'm actually very surprised how Java got this far all of these years and it's still actually standing out. A lot of people are actually using it. I haven't been using Java lately too much, but it's really surprising to see Java taking like a 40% of the 2020 of most developers. There's also Bash, Shell, and PowerShell. I'm very actually excited, like a lot of people learning the Shell scripting languages. This is actually an absolutely amazing thing. There's also C#. I know a lot of C# developers absolutely love the C# programming language. I've worked with it a couple of times in Udemy and game development, so this is, I love C# as well, because the ecosystem and the whole programming language is actually so sweet to handle and to work with. PHP, I'm not really that PHP guy, but I know a lot of people works with PHP, and most likely, from my opinion, what is the most language I've used during the whole year of 2020 and past 2019 is pretty much TypeScript. So just talking about TypeScript in here, it's taking 25%, and I see it's growing up day by day. A lot of JavaScript developers love TypeScript more and more, and they just move along to TypeScript and they can't use JavaScript anyway, because that's happened to me as well. Because any project try to work on, any just small projects, either educational project or anything like that, any tutorial, I go with TypeScript instead of JavaScript if it is possible. So it is absolutely amazing with TypeScript. If you're not learning it, I really advise you guys to just check out TypeScript just for a little bit, and you will see what I mean by TypeScript. It's just like a heaven of JavaScript. For web frameworks, and as I said before, well, as we all know, React.js is actually really growing super fast, but as we have seen since the couple of last years. But jQuery is just taking the lead with a huge gap in here, 43%, which is huge. It's almost 10% between it and the React.js, and as well as the Angular with React.js, actually 10% a gap. So it's quite a huge gap between these three libraries. And one thing I didn't like about this survey is actually including React.js in the framework section. As clearly it says web frameworks, clearly while React.js is not framework, but we can all just, we aren't gonna be looking at that. We're just gonna make ourselves we have never seen this anyway. But React.js is actually the second top web framework for 2020 after jQuery. I'm super surprised why a lot of people use jQuery. For me, I'm not using it anymore. I'm just using a lot of React.js with native DOM and vanilla JavaScript, and couple of times I've worked with Angular in 2020, but not the most. ASP.NET as well, it is a huge thing on the C# developers community, so it is as well taking like a huge part of the share of 2020 top frameworks. Express, who doesn't know the Express Node.js framework for creating robust and reliable and super fast Node.js RESTful APIs. So this is actually also taking it. Vue.js in here, I'm really proud of Vue.js just doing this great job. So it is a really good job for this one. Laravel taking 11%, and lastly there's Drupal. So it is an amazing job to see all of these frameworks. I'm still loving React.js. I've used React.js in the top of all of these. There's actually like 42,000 responses of all of these top frameworks, and all frameworks, libraries, and tools that have been used. Amongst them, Node.js is actually like almost 50%. It's just like half of all the other frameworks, or it's not quite a framework, it's like a runtime, but they are all like all of these. This contains all the different stuff: frameworks, libraries, runtimes, tools, stuff like that. And .NET and .NET Core actually taking the second and the third spot in a row. There is Pandas for Python, TensorFlow for AI and machine learning, and React Native, of course. And I see actually Flutter just coming up next or after the React Native, and tries just to get it down after React Native from 2015. So yeah, I love Flutter and I like Flutter. A lot of people loves working with Flutter. A lot of React Native developers actually have moved to Flutter and they loving it, but I haven't used a lot much Flutter, so I can't tell what is the difference quality between React Native. I love React Native. I've worked with it. I've worked actually with it for a decent time. I've worked with applications, so this is actually really good. And I've been actually working before in game development, so I'm loving seeing the Unreal Engine in here, and a lot of like game developers just taking part of this list. And it's really adorable to see all of different stuff. For databases, for me and many developers, uses MySQL as most preferred database system. Either the CLI, MariaDB, or like InnoDB. Both engines actually working pretty fine. And I love the MySQL engine. PostgreSQL as well is huge. But as we have seen in here, actually 55% from MySQL, which is like a huge gap between it and between the second spot from PostgreSQL. Microsoft SQL Server, not really a fan of Microsoft projects to be honest, but I've never tried this Microsoft SQL Server. SQLites, yeah, I see it really good, as well as the MongoDB, Cassandra, and Redis are actually really good as well. So a lot of people actually are using them again. And for different platforms that most developers have been loving to use throughout the whole year is actually Linux, as me and many developers. So they've been just working with Linux, and just like quite a small gap between the Windows. So it is not quite huge, as well as Docker. It's quite huge between these like gaps. But a lot of people see like it increases the community, or the lovers of Docker are actually increasing year by year. So every survey we find Docker just like getting more popular. More developers are like moving to Docker from Linux to working with Docker, and just making their deployment mechanism is just more simpler. WordPress taking 14.2% of the share. I see it is just like far more enough for like a PHP framework, and a lot of people loving WordPress as well. So yeah, for the most dreaded, wanted, and loved frameworks, libraries, tools, and languages. So this is actually the most dreaded languages. There's actually the Visual Basic. So I'm super surprised about that. How Visual Basic is actually still there, I can't actually explain that, but it just deserves the spot. It deserves the first spot, because I've worked with Visual Basic for once and it was just like hell. I don't know how people used to work with that, but it's just super difficult and it just doesn't make sense at all. Objective-C, well, I see a lot of iOS developers complains about that. I've never worked with it as well, so yeah, you got that. Assembly, Yeah, we all complain of that. We all complain of C as well. PHP, I do complain of PHP a lot. I'm one of the people who are actually dreaded of PHP and dreaded of VBA or Visual Basic. So yeah, you got the point in here. If you take a look, Rust is actually the less dreaded language. TypeScript is taking like 32%, so that's quite a huge share. The most loved language is Rust, as we've seen it before. TypeScript, I see it's actually taking a really good spot, like the second spot in here with a 67, taking it. Then there's Python. Yeah, a lot of developers love Python, especially with data science, so that's actually a good job from them. For most loved, dreaded, and wanted web frameworks, we got the dreaded framework is actually Angularjs. So a lot of people are afraid of using Angularjs. That's huge. I'm not surprised about that because Angularjs just provides this huge ecosystem with different stuff and different modules, different components, services and controls installed, different stuff. It just makes it even harder to understand that, but just make it sure that Angularjs is super easy to work with, and ecosystem is actually just easy, feels hard, but as soon as you just get into it, you jump ship, you're gonna be really good and you're gonna be loving it a lot to work with Angularjs. Jabul, jQuery, and ASP.NET, all different stuff in here. React.js is actually dreaded with a 31%. So yeah, because they all hear about this hyped thing. Most loved, ASP.NET is just taking the first lead. That's quite, what we see, surprising. React.js is the first one. So yeah, wanted, obviously, it's going to be React.js because I see huge developers around the globe are jumping ship from either jQuery, Angular, Vue.js, or even vanilla JavaScript to working with React because it just makes your life even much more simpler. For development environment, just gonna jump here. There's Windows. Still, a lot of people uses Windows. Then it comes next Mac OS X and Linux, and finally here for the top paying technologies is actually Perl because it is most dreaded and most paid language. Is 65 or 76 pretty much $K per year. If you look for JavaScript, just 53K, which is decent enough. So if you know JavaScript, React, different stuff like that, it's just going to be really good. TypeScript is actually a little bit higher, like a 57K. That's really good. So I hope you guys just go ahead and check out this survey because it's really good. It's going to give you a huge idea of what's coming up next, what languages are just standing top and stuff like that. So I hope you guys enjoy the video tutorial. As always, if you liked it, just push that like button. And if you loved it even more and you want to just have more video tutorials, why not just push that subscribe button because a lot of people are not subscribed and watching my videos. So I really hope you guys have enjoyed the video tutorial. As I've said before, see you guys in the next video tutorials. Adios.